Hello friends, Handjammer here. Do you also buy vintage computer items and forget about them? I bought this computer a few years ago and I put it on a shelf. Then I completely forgot about it. But in the end, also this MAGIX 386 has its turn. So without unnecessary ado, let's get started. Before we proceed, I want to share some important information. In connection to the Russian aggression in Ukraine and the complete destruction of the city of Mariupol, the IT-8-bit Museum and its collection of the old games and computers created by Dmitry Cherepanov ceased to exist. Dmitry lost the entire collection that he had been building for many years. If you would like to help him financially with his future projects, please refer to the description below, where you will find links to his social media. There, you can find more information on this topic. Taking this opportunity, I wish all Ukrainians a peaceful Easter. Let us hope that this terrible war will end soon. The first thing that catches your eye is an interesting case with blue accents. Despite its age, the computer is in a good condition, and in the 5¼ floppy disk drive, we still find the cardboard insert used during the transport. What catches the eye is the embossed manufacturer logo, MAGIX Computer Products, and the diagonal lines to which I have a weakness in the case of computers like this. There is a company sticker on the top edge of the housing, Best Bürotechnik plus organization from Wernburg, Germany, which probably provided support for this equipment. The back is boring, a typical VGA monitor connector and I/O ports. There are also some stickers, information about the model of the computer, station IT and the manufacturer, MAGIX Computer Products USA. Wait a minute, MAGIX? This MAGIX? Software brand known for multimedia software including the famous music maker? It turns out that yes. But before telling about the company, let's take a look at a rather embarrassing ad from 1999.
This may be the biggest thing that's ever happened. The biggest thing that's ever happened.
These poor animations remind me of the Eiffel 65 Blue music video. Yes, in 2028 we will definitely still record data to CDs, not to mention traveling in time. $19.99, so Matrix glasses are a must.
The future of music is now.
Remember kids, LSD is one hell of a drug.
Platzierst du auf dem nächsten Level deinen Musik- und Videohit. Wähle 0800 899 9999 für deine Version.
The company still exists and is doing well. According to its website, MAGIX has branches all over the world, including the one in the USA responsible for our computer. An extensive article about it can be found in the Spanish Wikipedia. According to it, the company was founded in 1993 in Munich, but something is wrong here, because our computer is definitely older. Contradictory information is provided by the English Wikipedia. According to the article, the company was founded in 1994. On the old MAGIX website, preserved at the Internet Archive, 1993 appears again as the date of the establishment. Open Corporate's database indicates that the company, its American branch anyway, was established in 1990, and that seems to coincide with the computer's production date. I estimate it to be 1991. Let's look inside the machine. To open the housing, you have to slide the cover back. The cover is hinged and can be lifted like a car's hood. The hard drive was removed by the previous owner. The only trace of it is its parameters recorded on the mounting bracket. The layout of the components is typical for machines of that time, and I think it doesn't require further explanation. What immediately catches the eye is this interesting RAM expansion card. In addition to it, on the motherboard you will find slots for SIP modules. The heart of the machine is a 25 MHz Intel 386 processor in ceramic housing. The motherboard is in perfect condition, no corrosion caused by the CMOS battery, thanks to the Dallas chip. I haven't seen such a hinge mechanism in other computers. This element is responsible for sliding the top cover to the rear of the case. And here is the hinge itself. The cover is just hooked on the pins, so it can be easily removed. As far as I remember, I turned on the machine for a quick test right after the purchase. Let's check if it still works after a few years. As you can see, the machine has quite rare Datatec Enterprises or DTK BIOS, in addition adapted for the MAGIX computer. The total memory installed is only 2 MB. Some errors are present due to a discharged CMOS battery. The setup program is a nice change from what we usually see in EMI or award BIOSes. Individual options allow you to configure the system, format MFM RLL disk, configure built-in utility programs, set a password, define user disk parameters, set a shadow RAM configuration. The last option is used to exit the setup. The main configuration menu contains what we expect, thus setting the real-time clock, memory size, floppy drives, hard drives, or display adapter. Time to disassemble and clean the machine. There is nothing unusual about it, so let's speed up this process a bit. The front panel is very easy to remove, thanks to the metal pins. You don't have to bother with screws. The drives are mounted on rails, similar to those used by the Enlight cases. To remove the 3.5-inch drive bracket, you need to unscrew the buttons panel first. The case has a characteristic bridge on which a power supply and 5.25-inch drives are mounted. This element is somewhat interesting. It is a bezel that allows the case to be set on its side, without showing the ugly underside. Of course, I will use green sealed bang to clean the case elements. I showed the process in the episode about 10D1000, so I will skip it this time. Let's take a look at the motherboard. Motherboard was made by DTK. Its model is the PEM2530. As I mentioned, the heart of the machine is 386 25 MHz processor. The Dallas chip needs service due to a low CMOS battery. The memory slots are populated with 4 modules, 256 KB each. The board has a connector for a 32-bit expansion card in a proprietary DTK standard. The VLSI chipset is responsible for managing the board. A large area of the board is occupied by the 74 series logic and PAL ICs. The mentioned DTK BIOS is stored in 2 EEPROM chips. We also have a socket for numeric coprocessor installation. The memory card has 3 additional banks which can be filled with 30-pin SIMs. In the first bank, 1 MB of memory was installed in 4 modules. The card configuration is set using the DIP switches. According to the documentation I found, the card configuration also depends on the amount of memory installed on the motherboard. The card is also a DTK product and its model is PEI306. The display adapter is the typical VGA card of this era, based on the Realtek RTG 31030 chip with 256 KB of memory. The last expansion is the IDE and floppy disk drive controller with the I/O controller. Its name is MAGIX I/O Plus. There is nothing unusual about it, so out of respect for your time, I will omit its wider description. The 5¼ floppy drive is the popular TIAC FD55GFR and it's in perfect condition. The 3,5" floppy drive is a quite rare Mitsubishi product, which has an extremely ugly front panel. And now, a little bit about the upgrades we will install. The first thing is the missing HDD. Possible options for its replacements are IDE drives from the same era, such as those Quantums. Another possibility is a SCSI drive, newer IDE drives or a CF card. I will need to think about this choice. I will replace the 3,5" floppy disk drive with a TRIAC drive that I like more. To add some multimedia character to this MAGIX machine, a CD-ROM is mandatory. This Mitsumi single-speed drive will be perfect, I suppose. The CD-ROM has its own controller. Another option for connecting it is to use a sound card with built-in Mitsumi interface. A slightly better graphic card will also be useful. The manufacturer of this particular card is Focus Information System Incorporated. The card also has some additional branding by Targa company. Senkity 4000, though it's not too fast compared to newer ISA cards, is a solid proposition, and as an early 90s SVGA, it is well suited for this build. A useful thing will also be a network card. The simpler and the more typical, the better. This NE2000 clone will be ideal. We will also expand RAM by adding SIM modules to the memory card. But we can also try expanding the memory installed on the motherboard with 1 MB SIP modules. As for the sound card, I have no idea what to install. The first option I think of is the MiroSound PCM1 Pro card. It has an OPL4 synthesizer that combines FM synthesis with sample-based one, also known as wavetable, and has a good Sound Blaster compatibility. Added advantage is Mitsumi CD-ROM interface, which would save us one ISA slot. These cards were introduced in 1993, so this is a product a bit later than our MAGIX. Another option is the legendary Yamaha Sound Edge. This card also uses the OPL4 synthesizer and has a Mitsumi interface as well. These cards were introduced to the market in 1995. Yet another option is a product from MediaVision, Jazz 16. It is a simple card with no special features. Of course, we can also use Creative Labs cards. How about a second generation Sound Blaster 16 CT2230? These cards have been sold since 1994. This card also features Mitsumi CD-ROM interface. Perhaps the Sound Blaster Pro will be more adequate. This one is version CT2600. These cards were introduced into sales in 1992. The difference to the popular CT1600 is Mitsumi CD-ROM interface. And this is the CT1600 variant for comparison. Which of these cards would you like to see on this computer? Vote in a poll available here. You can also find the link to the survey in the description below. I am waiting for your votes until May the 8th. The last thing is the numerical coprocessor. Not that it's really necessary in a machine from this era, but I have this Cyrix FastMath on hand, so it would be a shame not to use it. Installing the NPU is as simple as pressing it into the socket. One jumper also must be moved to activate the coprocessor. There is only one way to deal with the discharged Dallas chip soldered on the board. It needs to be desoldered and replaced with a working one. Before desoldering, I covered the pins on the bottom of the board with a flux. For ease of work, I liquefy the flux with the soldering iron and add some fresh solder to each pin. I remove the solder by heating the pins and using solder sucker. You can also use a heated solder sucker or the soldering gun. However, for small pads and small ICs, I prefer the classic manual solder sucker. To facilitate the extraction, before the chip is pulled out, it is worth preheating the solder pads with a hot air blower. Here is the motherboard with the Dallas chip desoldered. In order to install a new chip, I soldered a socket. If it turns out that there is some problem, we won't have to repeat the entire procedure. Do not use the so-called precision sockets for ICs with flat pins. They are not intended for them and they can cause problems. In addition, the standard socket suits the motherboard better. The assembly of the computer is the reverse of what I showed during disassembly. Motherboard is first thing to be installed. As for the Dallas chip itself, we have several options. Buying a new one is always the best. In this case, however, I decided to modify the original chip by exposing the contacts inside it and soldering the CR20 battery holder. The undoubted advantage of this method is a minimal cost. Like the modern reproductions of the Dallas chip, it will allow you to replace the battery in the future and the original appearance of the motherboard is preserved too. In practice, I do not see any reason to use modern Dallas replicas such as GW12887 or NW12887, as long as we have an original IC with a faulty battery at hand. And this is how the chip and the battery holder looks like after the installation and the machine is assembled. That's it for today. In the next episode, we will continue upgrading it. Do not forget to vote in the poll on which parts we should use in it. Meanwhile, I say goodbye to you and see you soon in the next episode.